The local school council training is something that's required each year for folks that haven't yet been through that. And I know we have a lot of new members and parents joining us and community members joining us either virtually or here today. So thank y'all for taking the time to do that today. Going to just go through this, and guys, I won't word for word it, but much of this is going to be going through each slide because of the technicalities and so forth that are tied to it. We want to be sure we don't leave anything out as we go. So with that said, the original purpose of local school councils is truly for parents and community to work together, because they're all critical to the success of the school, and to be sure that we have communication in place for parents, community members, business partners that are involved, to truly have a voice in the school, but also to be a voice for the school. Because so many times, so much is going on, there's so many moving parts, it's very easy sometimes for people to make assumptions or people to have discussions out and about in the community. The local school council often is that pulse, or is that voice in the community that can go back and relay information to others about some of the inner workings and what's really going on and how it's going on, as well as offering insight to the principal and the leadership team, and ultimately to our school board about needs that perhaps are there that you would like to see within the school community in which you serve. Carrying that on, we all often talk about schools are more successful when the community, parents, and obviously staff work together, and this is an effort to bring that closer together. And as with everything we do at school, it's either directly or indirectly tied to academic achievement. And we all know in Forsyth County, our schools we're very proud, among the best in the state, and academic achievement is tremendous throughout our district and throughout our different schools. So thank you for your role in that. Additionally, as a former teacher, I'm a former history teacher. Teaching's not easy, and it's not always, it's not something that necessarily gets easier in time. And with that said, local school councils are also there to help provide support and insight to teachers and to staff. And as I mentioned earlier, actually give parents a voice within the decision-making process. As I was sharing a while ago, the local school council also is an opportunity, and we'll talk through this more in a bit, for you to have an avenue to voice things through the principal to the Board of Education, to have a say in the school process, and hopefully build upon and have mutual respect for parents, community, administrators, and so forth. And then each and every school in our district throughout our community has a school improvement plan. That school improvement plan is tied to the overall district strategic plan. And our district strategic plan is what drives the work of our community. So as we trickle that district strategic plan through our community, through the schools, it is also a way for parents to have a voice in that, to help try to drive the individual school efforts to support the overall, success of each school, as well as tying it to the district efforts. Now, I'm going to go through the basic structures, but I will say that many schools have their own nuances inside this structure. I would almost say that the structure is the parameters to operate within, about how you do that, sometimes school to school and leader to leader, and with the different relationships that form, might look a tad different from each school, one way or the other, as long as you're in those guidelines, in those guardrails, so to speak. Then you should be fine. And if you have individual questions, we can follow up at the end. Each local school council must have a set of bylaws that guides its operations, each and every one. And I know each principal works with our different LSC officers to build upon those, to have them each year, and to ensure that they're in compliance with the expectations of the laws and the rules that are tied to this. Now, with that said, for new principals, and I know we have several in the room, your school should have existing bylaws that were used in the past, as some of your local school council members are likely folks that have served and they're still involved. However, if you need guidance on that, we can provide that from the district level, from the principal. Just reach out to us individually on that, and we'll talk through that if you need support on that. Each member of the LSC represents the community of parents and businesses that are affiliated with the school. So with that said, the local school council should not have folks serving that are parents at other schools that don't have kids at the specific school. And business partners obviously don't always necessarily have a kid at the school, but it should be someone whose business is in some way supportive of the individual school community of which the LSC member serves. The LSC should have a minimum of 7 members. Now you can have more than that, but you should have a minimum of 7 members. It's made up of parents and guardians, I just mentioned, at that particular school. And others, as I was mentioning, can join larger than those 7 if you choose to, per the bylaws. It is essential that at each LSC that the parents and guardians make up the majority of the LSC. So teachers who are also parents count as teachers. So many schools will have somebody at their school who teaches this particular subject, whose kid goes to that school, and they'll be on the LSC. They might be a teacher at the school. They count. They are also parents, but they count as teachers. So we need to be sure we have parental voice. Come in. We need to be sure we have parental voice in each LSC that is the majority. And as we go about that, that doesn't mean that teachers can't serve. They just need to be sure that the teachers who are not parents make up the majority. At least 2 parents or guardians should also be business persons. Each LSC out of the 7 we're talking must have a minimum of 1 principal, 2 teachers, 2 parents and business partners, and 2 parents or guardians. And 4 of the 7 members who are parents can't be employees, as I was just mentioning. And that's important. I know that we're being repetitive with that, but many times that comes up in different schools because we are blessed with so many folks in our community who are also parents that teach at the different schools. So they can be involved, but they can't factor into that majority. Members elected to serve in the LSC serve 2-year terms, but they may serve more than 1 term. Now, going back to new principals, that's where we're saying there's a good chance that you probably have someone on your LSC that's just finished year 1 of their term, so you should be able to have some continuity there. So if you haven't began those discussions with those folks, I would suggest we do that sooner than later, and just kind of be sure that we're in alignment with LSC and expectations to be sure we have everything in place for this year. Election dates and procedures are guided by the bylaws, but terms should be staggered so that you're not replacing all your officers at the same year. Have staggered terms. Those wishing to run for LSC must be parents and guardians of the students at that school once again, and only parents or guardians of students who are at that school are eligible to vote as representatives. Now let me be clear, once you have an election for LSC, and you put it out to your parental community on your website or however you choose to do that at each school, parents that have reached out or that have communicated they want to be part of the LSC or business partners that do, you can vote on the voting members going into who the different officers are. That doesn't mean that others could not come, because LSC meetings are public meetings. They're open record meetings. The notes are taken at each meeting. I will also say that as part of the LSC meeting, you should be advertising those in advance as required for any public meeting. Oftentimes schools put that on their website or their social media or however you would typically communicate with parents. Now by doing that, you may have other people in your community that want to learn something come to a meeting. And that's okay, it's an open meeting. They can come, but they can't vote. And unless you call on them to offer their insight, they're not there to dictate any purpose of the meeting, nor are they there to voice any personal situation, be it positive or otherwise. They're there to learn about the school. The LSC is typically a place, and I would say this for LSC members as well, it's a partnership. It's not a place for anybody who's got an individual frustration regarding anything involving the school or their child or their teacher or whatnot. Those meetings are individual meetings that need to be set up with school administration. The LSC meetings are truly to be informative for a collaborative discussion to support the school as a whole, not individual situations that may arise. But once again, people, once you post that, may choose to come and watch those meetings, or join the meetings, learn about the school. They can ask questions, but that's not a place for them to bring any grievance or whatnot for the LSC to have to, handle or deal with, so to speak. That's a place for essentially for y'all to collaborate and learn to support the school. Vacancies on the LSC should be replaced within 30 days via election unless the person has less than 90 days left in the term, and parent business persons are selected by the principal. So if there's more business partners, you can have more than the minimum, but you have to have that many. The principal gets the final voice on who those persons are. Each LSC should have 3 elected officers, a chairperson, which must be a parent, the vice chairperson, and the secretary. Now, I mentioned a while ago that notes are taken and so forth. Either the secretary needs to be someone who is trained to do that work and properly do it so that it's entered, and that's okay if it is. There are also schools that allow one of their clerical staff to come in to do the notes, to upload them in the system that it's required to do as a support to the parent or to the business person that potentially was the elected secretary as a support. So how that looks at each school may be differently, but we must be sure that the person that is actually taking the notes is doing so in a manner that it can be uploaded as required per LSC bylaws, LSC rules and regulations. All right, major operations. The bylaws guide the conduct of the business of the LSC, and any adoption or changes to those bylaws require a 2/3 affirmative vote. So going back to that minimum of 7 parents, it can be more than that of elected members, but any changes to the bylaws require a 2/3 affirmative vote. And additionally, all meeting dates and times shall be determined by a majority vote. Now, what often happens at schools is that the first meeting date would be set by the principal talking to the chairperson, unless there's a vacancy, and if there is, the principal set the date for the first meeting. After that time, then the LSC will convene and select the meeting dates for the rest of the year. And once those meeting dates are established, they must be published, and the principal would send those to the district office for us to publish as part of the state requirements on that, so that once again it's an open meeting. People know when they are, and people know what time and location they're going to be. Once again, all meetings require a quorum of LSC members, so I would encourage you, if you get feedback for any meeting that a number of people will not come, you won't have a quorum, I would suggest you adjust that date, because if you don't have a quorum, the meeting's not an official meeting. And if you do adjust it, you need to notify, once again, all the avenues you take to notify folks of your meeting date. You would need to notify the rescheduled date as well. The LSC must meet no fewer than 4 times per year. As I was sharing, advertising for these meetings must be done in advance to provide the opportunity for public participation, and you can have additional meetings if you choose to. Some schools meet more frequently. Some schools are now doing these vertical team LSC meetings, which are great for many communities that are doing those, and that's fine if you choose to do that route, but each school needs to have a minimum of 4 LSC meetings a year. Once again, if you do more than that, that's okay, but not less than that. Meeting minutes must be captured and made available to the public, as well as council members, within 20 days. And as I was mentioning, they must be published. It is open to open records legislation. The LSC may appoint any committee, study group, or task that it deems helpful. So once again, other parents may want to get involved, other business partners, other teachers. It's okay for the LSC to designate a group to look into different things or to research different things that impact the school. They just are not necessarily voting members of the LSC, but it's okay if others are involved to support efforts for the LSC at the LSC's request. The LSC may request and receive information not made lawfully confidential of the Board of Administration and District Administration. So if there's questions about district operations, the LSC can request that through the principal if there's any questions that arise through the year that a general conversation would not suffice for. The LSC may provide recommendations to the Board of Education, and the LSC will provide an annual report to the Board of Education. Now, I want to touch on this for just a moment. Many times in my tenure, I was previously principal, and then now in my current role as chief of staff for the school district, parents call and they'll want to share something they would like to see happen in their school community. That's great to share that, but how that actually gets to the board is each year there's an annual report that is due that will be submitted to our office. We actually take the feedback from each school, and schools have all types of requests, some of them facilities related, some could be, without me getting in the weeds, it could be anything related to the school. You would submit that on that annual report, at which time it is given to our district staff and our Board of Education to review needs of different communities. Now, many times, much of the work you see coming about at different school campuses, and once again, I was previously principal at Forsyth Central, so I'll use this example, and this happens at every school community. We currently, at the last LSC, pardon me, let me rephrase that. The most recent SPLOST was passed, and it included a band room addition for that school. Now, I can tell you, having been at that school for a number of years, that was on two or three years of LSC requests dating back 6 or 7 years. So that was something that parents and that school community requested to the board. The board reviewed it. They determined it was a valid need. They put it forth through the SPLOST election. So if you voted for that, and as well as a number of other things around our district, thank you for that. But that originated from an LSC annual report. That addition to the school is that being a need that the school saw, or that the parents had, as well as the administration at the time, and our district leadership looked and saw that was a valid need. That originated through that. So as you're working on the LSC at your school, leaders and parents, our business partners, as those things come up throughout this year, I would recommend just keeping a log or a running tab of needs that might arise that are determined legitimate. Now, the principal may need to work with the LSC on what is the most pressing, because if you send 15 things in, it's clear that those are probably not all things that could be immediately tackled. But we used to categorize this in discussions as wants and needs. Many times wants are things that are not as pressing, or perhaps that's where a different support system that's at the school from with a variety of boosters or PTO or whatnot might be involved could help support. And then there are needs, which are major things. Those needs are what I would recommend working together to determine what those are and put those on those annual reports to the board. And that's how I would suggest go about getting those major things accomplished, by working together. Per FCS practice, the LSC will be consulted regarding the selection of new principal and vacancy when new principal vacancies emerge. So obviously we're blessed with so many great leaders in our district, so many great principals that have grown and gone to other positions. We've had some retirements in recent years, but raise your hand if you're a new principal in the room. Some folks went other places, so those folks right there were not in those roles last year. Prior to any principal being hired, our superintendent, as well as representatives that he takes with him from Human Resources and/or the superintendent's cabinet, would meet with the LSC at that school to determine the needs of that school and what the parents and/or business partners as are part of the LSC would, excuse me, like to see as attributes of the new principal. Now, I will tell you, they don't meet and say, "Hey, give us your top name." That's not the process. It is traits, tendencies, leadership qualities that you would like to see in your next principal. With that said, I'm personally aware from my conversations with Mr. Young that those decisions have impacted who the principal was multiple times in the last 2 to 3 years, that when he was previously involved in that role as deputy superintendent, where they maybe the process was this might be a good person, but they meet with the LSC and say no, based off of the feedback from the local school council, this leader's who that school really needs. So I want you to know that if that occurs at the school you serve, those conversations truly do impact those decisions. So that's an important tidbit that many people don't understand. This is the process of the principal selection process each year. All right, major topics for discussion. Once again, the LSC is an advisory body. The LSC should provide advice and recommendations to the school principal, the Board of Education, and the superintendent on matters related to student achievement and/or school improvement. The main focus of topics, and I would encourage you to work with your principal. When I was principal, I would often at the very first meeting ask the LSC members, what are things you would like to learn more about this coming year at our school? What are things you may have questions about? And maybe those are things I was best suited to answer. Maybe it's something another member of our leadership team was best suited to answer. I do know that as we work through district initiatives, if it's things with facilities or SPLOST or different community efforts, Oftentimes, district leadership is sitting and ready and happy to come and present and share out. I know our superintendent and/or cabinet come to many LSC meetings at the principal and the LSC's request to talk through different topics. But many of those topics include some of the points on the board now. I won't read them to you for the sake of your time. But those are just some suggestions that many local school councils in recent years have worked through or have wanted to learn about. Certainly, if you have other things on your wish list, this list is not conclusive, nor is it final in any capacity. You can add anything you want to add to it. But that is some suggested talking points that many schools have used in recent years. And here's some more. Few reminders, and we'll close out, and then after we close out, we can take questions if you have them. At the end of the day, the success of the LSC is the school's success, and vice versa. It's important that you're an inner working team. Nobody gets anywhere individually, and nobody gets anywhere standalone. I can tell you there's not a principal in this district that doesn't rely on their local school council to be teammates, to be supports, and to also be a place to get honest feedback. So I would say it's a place for you to give honest feedback to your principal. If you're hearing things in the community they need to be looped in on, that's once again not an individual grievance but a concern for your school. And it's also a place for you to be a voice back to the community on behalf of the school, the principal, and the team at the school that you serve. LSC members represent the entire school, not individual groups. So if your child's on a team or a club or involved in a program, once again, individual meetings are where we discuss concerns with those things, not LSC meetings. LSC members are there to represent the entire community. Successful LSC see themselves as a team, and trust is vital. And I can tell you as a former principal, I had conversations with the LSC that I did not say publicly out to the general population because I needed their honest feedback. I knew I could ask them questions that I wouldn't necessarily get on a podium in front of 100 people and say. That's where you have that trust built. That's got to be a two-way street. So I challenge you to build that relationship with the leaders and the folks on the LSC so you're a collaborative team. And positive communication is the key to that trust. And that means you need to be honest, but always be respectful as you work together. It's important that everybody understands their roles. You know, we're all here as school representatives in some capacity. We talk a lot about folks being in the right seat on the bus. The school's only got one principal. The school's only got one LSC chairperson, teacher down the line. We all have to work together. We have to respect one another. And at the end of the day, the LSC members are there to advise and the principals are there to decide, because the principal is the one that is held directly responsible by our superintendent and our Board of Education regarding the decisions and the things that occur at the school. But I promise you, as a former principal and from talking to former principals, the LSC is an integral part of the support that principal needs for the school to be successful. And I do believe we're all here because we want our individual schools and our students to have the best possible experience in the schools that they attend for overall success. And I think a good way for us to do that is to be reminded, everybody in this room, everybody on earth has something that they're not for, but we're all for the same things. I think we're all for our kids having a great experience. I think we're all for our kids learning and being successful. I think we're all for our schools remaining and being among the best in the state. We need to rally around the things we're for, use our different experiences, our different backgrounds to find common solutions to be sure that our schools are successful. And I know I've driven this home a time or two, but I'm going to say it one more time because there's always that one outlier that sometimes gets confused regarding their role as part of the LSC. The LSC is not a place for individual discussions, individual grievances, or to voice those amongst the parents. That is not what we're for. We're for a collaborative effort to support our schools so that our kids can have a great experience. And at the end of the day, the Forsyth County schools and our strategic plans can be summarized with 3 words: safe, connected, and thriving. Obviously, it's important as we do that to follow belief statements. We're respectful of one another, empathetic. I think it's always great to assume the best in others. Sometimes that's easy to say and hard to do, but once again, we're all on the same team looking for the same overall effort. you know, I think that kids that are most successful, and I would say whatever grade they're in, they're going to have a better experience if they're connected in some capacity outside of the actual school day. So if you get your child, I would encourage you to get your child and or their friends as y'all work together in our community. Get them plugged in. If it's a fine arts effort, if it's career tech, if it's athletics, if it's anything else that our different schools offer, get the kid plugged into something, because oftentimes a great way to make our big schools feel small is to have small pockets of folks who are on common teams and common efforts as part of the overall school environment. And with that, I think that that's where many of the strongest friendships and supports are formed. I think that we all are concerned in society nowadays with students' overall wellness, and it's my personal belief that students are often better balanced when they're plugged in and connected. So I would challenge you to support that effort. All students and staff need a strong sense of purpose. We want our kids to be able to think critically and creatively. And once again, guys, family and community engagement are essential for that continual improvement process. I do thank you for being here today. I do thank you for being willing to step up and serve. I know there's other things you could be doing this early in the morning on what's going to turn into a busy day for many people. So I do thank you for being here.